I'm just imagining something like a Sky remote control, which has got a series of buttons on it. The red button on my imaginary remote control might be familiar if you watch YouTube videos much. I've referred to the red button, and I think Gary referred to it a couple of times in Mendham. And I know Dana Garrett in one of his videos over the last couple of days mentioned it as well, and I'm sure it features elsewhere. The red button on the Sky remote control is the homicide button. This is a thought experiment. I don't think anybody on YouTube really has got a big red button that will kill all members of the human race. I don't think. I may be wrong. There might be some guy sitting there, you know, with a big red button on his desk, and he's thinking, "Oh, I'll just watch this last video from Pathless Path or from Pangea Progress or whatever it is. I'll just watch this last video and see if it inspires me." And his hand hovering over that. I don't think that's the case. It's a thought experiment to drive us towards certain kinds of thinking. But I'm imagining other buttons as well. It's a Sky remote control. There's more than just a red button. There's also the green, the blue and the yellow button. So I'm thinking what the function of those is. Let's just return to the red button for a second. The red button, as I say, is the homicide button. You press that and all human life disappears from the earth. Let's say it disappears painlessly, otherwise it'd be defeating the object. It just vanishes. The world becomes a bit like that documentary series, I think it's called The World Without Us or Life After Us or something like that. And there was a book about it came out as well, what the world would look like if humans vanished. So that's the red button, it just does that. But there's other buttons. The green button is slightly more radical. The green button is the biocide button in my thinking. You press that button and every DNA molecule on the planet, possibly in the universe if you wanted to be even more radical about it, every DNA molecule unwinds. The thinking behind that is that whilst it might be alright eradicating human suffering or human pleasure or just humanity for its pointlessness or whatever, you've still got all these animals around here who seem to be doing all kinds of things to get by. For example, my dogs, which you can hear yelping in the background, are trying to kill rabbits right now. And there's probably rabbits in that thicket over there, cowering in fear of my dogs, who are having a time of their lives. Which is a strange picture. Anyway, if you think too hard on that, you might be tempted to press the biocide button, which basically says, yeah, the whole life project itself is built on an unfortunate cycle. And yes, all life runs around wagging its tail like a dog chasing a rabbit sometimes, and all life cowers in fear under a thicket sometimes. But it's not a good idea, it's not a good picture, and that's a script which is ultimately written by the DNA molecule at some point in our history, and it's an inevitability, so it's probably one to avoid. So if you feel that way, you would consider at least pressing the green biocide button. Then there's two more buttons. The blue button is the zombie button, and the zombie button doesn't apparently change anything. Life goes on exactly the same as it appears to now. The dogs keep chasing the rabbits, I keep making YouTube videos, cars keep going past on the road behind me, everything stays the same, but all internal life, all consciousness stops. Human consciousness stops, animal consciousness, whatever that may be, stops. Any kind of internal self-monitoring, self-reflexive processes just cease and is replaced by just autonomy, really. We become autonomous, we all become Stepford wives, really. We look great from the outside, but there's nothing going on. The lights are on, but nobody's home. It's one of those kind of things. So whilst these animals appear to be running around with their tails wagging, and whilst they appear to be cowering in fear, that's just a pretense, it's just a dumb show. And similarly for me, I appear to be having thoughts right now, and I appear to be fueling those thoughts with evaluations based on positive and negative implications of various actions, but that's just a facade. This is just computation showing itself as pixels on a screen. So that's the third button. I can't remember what colour it was, blue. That's the blue button. It's the zombie button. It eradicates consciousness. The fourth button eradicates pain. That's all it does. It just eradicates negative responses. And please, if anybody does respond or comment to this video, please don't say that pain is the absence of pleasure, or you can't have one without the other, because I think you can. And even if you think you can't, pretend for the sake of the exercise that you can. And there's a good evidence that you can actually. They use different centres in the brain and all that kind of stuff. So all the pain responses immediately stop. All suffering stops. There is no suffering. There is just pleasure, to varying degrees. So it starts from pretty much where I am now, which is neutral, doesn't feel like anything particularly. And then it goes up through joy and ecstasy to some kind of, I don't know, epiphany, whatever it may be. There is just that. That's what the yellow button does. That would be probably a very ugly world to look at, but it would feel great to live in. People would be shuffling through this world, probably have no fingertips, and probably their hands would be stumps, because they don't feel pain, so they're constantly trapping their fingers in car doors and shoving them in fires because they don't know the difference. Playing jokes with one another, setting each other's hair on fire and running around. Lots of that kind of stuff going on. But there's no pain, so nobody cares, it's absolutely fine. There are dead children in the streets with dogs feeding on their flesh. But the children didn't mind when they died, because they didn't feel pain, they just tripped and nobody thought to pick them up. And their parents didn't care, because they had no pain, no suffering receptors either. They just carried on and maybe had some more or didn't or whatever, they just enjoyed themselves. So it's a very ugly world to look at, but you know, a very pleasant world to live in. Yeah. Okay, I've run out of buttons. So those are the 4 buttons: homicide, biocide, zombie and painless.